Happy Thankstaking to all the people. Shout out to everybody on Substack. Feeling a little educational this morning, man. A little lit, wiping Febby with some of the mimosas. Hey, Happy Thankstaking, man. It's been a whole bunch of colonial myths that said about Thanksgiving and it said about indigenous people. And as your, friendly neighborhood educator, it was just on my mind and on my heart to come give you all a little bit of information. Because I know a lot of us like to believe that Native Americans, people that are indigenous to Turtle Island, that they are just, habitually conquered people, and when we think they're habitually conquered people, it feeds into colonial violence and what we're going to call the indigenous erasure. And what I know, shout out to everybody in Oklahoma. I spent like 13 years in Oklahoma. I learned while I was in the great state of Oklahoma, what I'm saying, they call it Indian Territory, that the United States federal government has broken over 500 treaties with Native American tribes. Over 500 treaties. A lot like, the settler colonial state of Israel, does not care about the deals and care about the agreements that it makes with the indigenous people. The American government also had the same disregard. You feel me? They would make a promise to indigenous tribe, and then because they felt like some things happened on the land that they wanted, they would literally go back on the agreement they had. It's almost like the idea of Indian giving is something that is perverted by power because in actuality, it's white folks, it's the European colonial settlers that used to give shit and then take it back. You know what I'm saying? This is my little call to action, all my challenge to everybody that's gonna be with your family. You gonna be eating your turkey, I ain't gonna even cap. I smoke a turkey right there as well. Just make sure you give thanks to not only give thanks, you give acknowledgement to the native land that you own. When you're giving thanks to your family and all the blessings and all the favors you've had this year, think about also those native tribes, you feel me, that was indigenous to the area that your family now has the ability to come and meet at. You feel me? I've been thinking a lot about the crossover, a lot of the overlap. What happened in Osage County, California, and what happened in Tulsa. I said California. What happened in Osage, Oklahoma, and what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I've been thinking about that overlap and how a lot of the same European, descendants that was there in Oklahoma committed violence against the Osage Nation. It's known as the Osage murders. If you're not familiar with it, I definitely encourage you to go look it up, research over me search, check it out. I'm gonna give you a little background history on it though, right? So in the 1920s, I think it's like 1918, you feel me to be specific, but like in the 1920s, there was a oil reserve that was discovered in Osage County, Oklahoma. At the time, this was Indian territory, and it's important to acknowledge that the reason why, the American white folks gave indigenous people this little area in Oklahoma and even gave them Oklahoma because they believed it was not rich in resources. So they gave them the land they thought that was the most decrepit. They gave them the land they thought that had zero resources. They discovered some oil in Osage County that made these Indians that was in Osage, nation, the Osage County, it made them some of the richest people in the country per capita in like the 1920s, right? What happened was because that amount of wealth got found in Osage County, Oklahoma, and it's the same time of the Tulsa race riots. Tulsa race riots happened like 1921. The Osage murders took about a 10-year period. So from 1918, I believe, to 1931, you see there is a long, I say long, you see there is a insidious, orchestrated taking out of over 60 wealthy Osage Indians, where they have, different white folks marrying into the family, taking out everybody in the family and make it where they're the closest to get the land rights and land deeds. You have individuals that's known to take out, what I'm saying, they said they took a walk, in some type of what they say, took a walk some wooded area and they came back and well, they never came back. This all happened. And let me know in the comments too. Y'all can hear me, y'all can see me because I feel like when I'm in my backyard, my coverage ain't that good. But what I'm talking about in terms of settler colonialism is how colonial violence has been able to justify some of the most inhumane things to indigenous people, especially when I was in Oklahoma. I was able to learn so much. You feel me? So much. The Osage Nation was done so bad that the United States Congress made a decision and said that because they was wiping out so many of the adult Osage Nation, you know what I'm saying, like the parents, they had so many different children that was supposed to, inherit a lot of the wealth their parents, you know what I'm saying, had already had. Man, when I tell y'all the Congress made a law that made it where the white people had to have the guardianship. It's the 1920s. Per capita Osage Nation is one of the richest, counties in America because these oil reserves that they accidentally discovered, which was really crazy. And it's important to point out too, Osage County in Tulsa, Oklahoma, like where the Tulsa race rise or the Tulsa race massacre happened, I should say. They very close. I'm talking about you can leave Northwood, you can leave North Tulsa, Greenwood, you can go straight to Osage County. I'm talking about this just a little hop skipping away. And even when we think about Thanksgiving, the Wampanoag people and things like that, I feel like it's just a lot of ways that you see people fight tooth and nail to be able to have indigenous people as their mascots, but don't think of how to have that same energy when it comes to recognize the humanity or the sovereignty of indigenous people. And today, day of Thankstaking, where we like to romanticize colonialism because Abraham Lincoln told us to. You know what I'm saying? A day we like to, really think about all these real empirically false narratives around Thanksgiving just so we can give thanks to our families. It's just something for you to sit in. When I was in Oklahoma and I was constantly surrounded by the presence of indigeneity, and not only the presence of indigeneity, but the actual, like, I'm gonna say, like, the ideology, epistemology, you feel me, the culture, the traditions of indigeneity, I really used to always reflect on Thanksgiving and how much Thanksgiving for non-native people is seen as a great time of the year. And then, I learned about the Day of Remembrance and how a lot of indigenous people, they use, this Thanksgiving Day as a day of remembrance to think about and remember all of the various tribes and specifically the Wampanoag people who, spurring on this whole Thanksgiving tradition. Um, when I first started thinking about power and domination, one of the first things I learned and realized is how power perverts reality and how perverse power really is. And I think when it comes to Native Americans, you're able to see it in more ways than some, especially when it comes to the idea that, Native Americans are savages or barbaric. And you see how, Europeans were engaging in cannibalism to survive off of Native Americans' bodies. You see a lot of ways that after, the Wampanoag people taught, these different Europeans how to survive here in Turtle Island, they literally turned the sword and the gun on them and wiped them out. And then called them savages in return. When we get ready to celebrate, I think every time we celebrate 4th of July, and I'm not saying you shouldn't celebrate 4th of July, but maybe you shouldn't. I always think about the Declaration of Independence and what it says specifically about the savages and what it said about Native Americans. Now, just think about this overall erasure of indigeneity and how Thanksgiving and the celebration of Thanksgiving, that's why I call it Thanksgiving, is a continuation of that erasure. You feel me? When I was in college, I learned about these two scholars named Tuck and Yang. Tuck and Yang had this. They, they had this criticism or critique of how academia uses violence and how it commodifies it. And something that I learned about and reading about Tuck and Yang was something they called the settlers' move to innocence. And I ain't gonna talk y'all ear off all day. So I'm hoping to drop a little seeds, make it where y'all wanna go look up some of this shit, right? Education is elevation. Right now, you're technically watching an exclusive episode of Research Over Me Search. Shout out to the people on Substack. I feel like I should do more of this, but listen, the settler move to innocence is how different settlers and descendants of settlers are able to, talk about decolonizing and make a whole bunch of empty signifiers without never even taking accountability for colonial violence or without even giving up that they've been able to, either inherit from colonial violence. And I think that Tuck and Yang has a great criticism of settler colonialism. And if you want to know the difference between settler colonialism and colonialism, just saying it a little quick and dirty, a little simplified. Colonialism is when you have like a foreign state that comes into a place and extracts all the wealth and all the resources, but they stay over where they at. You feel me? Like technically kind of how like the British did to the Americas. It was just like colonizers. Settler colonizers, is more like the American colonists. You feel me? Or the settler colonizers of Israel. You know what I'm saying? Like they are, it's like settler colonialism is when you have like people that are from a foreign country come into a country, could come into a nation state, settle and colonize it to the point where they get to see themselves as being the indigenous people. It's almost why I have to be careful when I be like, I'm from Bryan, Texas. I used to say I'm from Bryan, Texas. I usually don't say I'm a native of Bryan, Texas, because I know that there's actually native people that was in Bryan, Texas, and I'm not one of them. You know what I'm saying? I'm not indigenous to Bryan, Texas. I'm indigenous. I did my DNA test last night. I found out that that through the matrilineal side, shout out to African ancestry, that I'm my mother's side of the family comes from Cameroon, and specifically three different tribes. The Massa, Mafa, and the Akaputu. I just learned this last night, so I gotta still, you know what I'm saying, get it in. But I'm saying this all to say that colonialism has been so powerful, it's been able to displace more people than we realize. When I learned that, you feel me, like, some people say every 6 days, some people argue that it ain't that close, but it's thinking like, Imma say 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks throughout the world, there's a country that celebrates independence England from England. As a matter of fact, the reason why I'm talking to y'all right now through this fluent English is because of how fluent the English was in being able to colonize. They was able to tell my ancestors that our language, our culture was not good, and they was able to give us English, and that's the reason why I speak with an English dialect. It's the reason why I'm always be like, people be like, there's no such thing as talking white. I'm like, hold on, hold on, hold on. You know, white supremacy is the reason why you even speak English. You know that, right? But I say that what I'm just getting into is, the celebration of indigeneity. If you're watching this right now, you came in late. My call to action for you to do is to think about and to learn about the indigenous tribe that come from where you celebrating Thanksgiving today. I call it Thankstaking. So wherever you celebrating Thanksgiving today, I challenge you, I implore you, go to Google Scholar, go to Google, look at the indigenous tribe of the city that you in and learn about them, learn about the customs, learn about how Europeans is able to wipe them out so we can have our romanticized celebrations of Thanksgiving, you know what I'm saying, where we have federal holidays and things like that. Also, I guess the last thing I'm gonna say in conclusion, I see my kids and got up, my wife is, over here. Last thing I'm gonna say, I gotta get ready for people to come over and shit, is that one of the reasons why I think America has great settler solidarity with Israel is because it can identify with how it uses religion to be able to say it is the rightful owners of a land. Manifest destiny is believed to be ordained by God. It's divine belief that Europeans have the right to expand and settle and colonize from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And a lot of times, you feel me, Zionism is the Israel version or the Middle East version of manifest destiny. It's also their belief that God said, this is my land, not your land, and I have the right to be able to have this Israeli pan greater Israel thing from Egypt all the way to Lebanon because God told me to. And what you'll find is that people of a European descent always are able to use God. It's something about them Abrahamic religions. You feel me? I would almost argue that at the core, Abrahamic religions is justified by land theft and land acquisition. You know what I mean? Hey, all Rome's lead to Rome. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. When I was going to this little Christian summer camp and they had us getting ready to go evangelize in Jamaica, a colony of England, they taught us the Romans Road. They call it the Romans Road to salvation. And then when I got a little conscious, I started thinking like, damn, Romans 3:23, Romans 10:9, Romans 12:2, Romans 15. All these verses is what they give us when we go evangelize in these other countries. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, and all roads follow to Rome. I don't think it's ironic that the Roman Catholic Empire technically it never really evolved. It just institutionalized itself, and everybody bought into it. You feel me? And you see that the way that the Discover Doctrine, kind of took place. It allowed for things like the settler colonization of America to take place because they started believing in the laws a certain way. Discovery Doctrine said that shit, if you go somewhere and them folks ain't Christian, they don't believe in Jesus, you can take their land. As a matter of fact, it's something that when a bunch of liberals was talking about, I think it was Congresswoman RBG, Ruth Gatorberg. I was in Oklahoma at the time, And when everybody was like celebrating, oh my God, this, that, don't get me wrong, she done some great things, you feel me? And it's amazing for different ways of how women can view themselves and being in different power, you know what I'm saying? Different roles of power. I understand representation. But on some settler colonialism shit, Ruth Gatorberg has cited this discovery doctrine in one of her decisions. Like she cited a settler colonial tool that justified the entire colonization of the New World by Europeans as a justification for one of her decisions, and she did that in like this day and age, this day and age. Yeah, man, indigenous erasures, settler colonialism, you know, settlers move to innocence. Education is elevation. If you want more of this, let me know. I feel like people don't really appreciate these lessons on the other platforms, and I think that here on Substack, I got a little bit more appreciation for it, man. If you this first time you ever seen me, my name is George Lee, aka the Conscious Lee. Don't forget the Lee. You can find me on theconsciouslee.com. I do a lot of workshops, a lot of facilitations, a lot of panels. I have a degree in African American studies. That's my undergraduate degree. I got a master's degree in human relations. I also have another master's degree in adult and higher education. I spent about like 7 years of being a professor at the University of Oklahoma, where I was also like a director of the debate team. I won a national championship in debate in 2019. Then they cut the program, you know how the folks do, you know what I'm saying? I was also a ninth and 10th grade English teacher, in Oklahoma City as well. So I'm looking to just spread a little bit more love, passion, and education. My motto is education is elevation and research over me search. What my shit called over here at Substack. If you're looking really to find you a nice, relatable guy, you know what I'm saying? I consider myself pretty smooth, pretty cool. Happy Thankstaking. This is where you want to be at, man. This is where you want to be at. I think I'm gonna start coming on Substack more, especially doing these little live streams because I can see y'all, yeah, y'all coming in. I thank y'all. I appreciate y'all. My call to action and challenge is this right here: learn and know more about. Some of y'all don't even know what is the indigenous tribe of the city you celebrating Thanksgiving in. Who were the indigenous people of the city you and your family about to eat turkey, stuffing, dressing, whatever you want to call it, pumpkin, or you know what I'm saying, or some sweet potato? I know my audience a little, you know what I'm saying? So shit, like who the folks that experience everyday indigenous erasure for us to be able to experience what we experiencing with our families? I know where I'm at here in Texas. I can tell you, you know what I mean? Do you know? Education is elevation. I holla at y'all. I go live more, you feel me, with my family getting here, but I holla at y'all.